So, let us begin then. Go ahead, Adhila.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I want to say sorry. I cannot turn on my camera because I cannot sit. If I sit, I will have a headache and I want to vomit. So I am lying down and I cannot turn on my camera. I don't think you guys want to see me lie down, right? So let's go into the presentation. First, our group is consists of me, Adhila, and we have Leslie, Dicky, and also Indra. And we are going to talk about a problem solution. First, we are going to talk about what do we mean by a problem. So guys, if you are Googling what do we mean by a problem, this is probably will appear. So a problem is a situation preventing something from being achieved. Yang artinya masalah itu adalah ketika suatu hal yang membuat kalian tidak bisa mendapatkan sesuatu yang kalian inginkan atau sesuatu yang tidak sesuai dengan keinginan kalian. It could be called as a problem. Dan the word come from a Greek word meaning obstacle atau juga we call it obstacle atau halangan dan sesuatu yang menghalangi jalan kalian. And then ketika seseorang mempunyai suatu masalah, they have to find the solution of to solving it. I mean, like if there's a problem, you won't let it just be. You have to find the solution, and this is going to be discussed in this presentation. All right, and then the means of solving problem is called a solution. You may next, Dicky. And then in the sense we are using word in this book, a problem is a situation where we need to find a solution from a set of initial condition. Jadi secara sederhana ketika kita coba untuk analogikan, kalau kita consider membuat kopi misalnya adalah kalau kita mau membuat kopi dan kita harus menjelaskan seluruh prosesnya atau kita harus menganalisa prosesnya untuk kita lalui, itu akan cukup complicated. Misalnya kalian harus list dulu kalian perlunya apa, misalnya kalian perlunya a cup, teaspoon, a jar of coffee, terus a kettle, water, milk, and etc. And then ketika kalian mendapatkan all that items, you have to boil it and everything, and that it is something that we did it. It could be a problem if you cannot make it, but if you do that in your everyday life, you just have to do it without thinking how to do it. You know what I mean? Kalian tinggal lakukan tanpa kalian harus jelaskan the systematic ordernya. Meskipun itu complicated, itu adalah sesuatu yang kalian lakukan tanpa berpikir. Dan Okay, let me continue. Dan itu adalah sesuatu yang kalian lakukan tanpa berpikir. Namun ketika kalian melakukan sesuatu yang baru, yang mungkin lebih simple daripada hal itu, tapi kalian tidak pernah melakukannya, then you need a solution. Then you need a kind of process to do it. And it is called the solution of the problem that we are going to talk in this discussion. Solving most problem requires some sort of strategy, a method of proceeding from the involved trial and error, and this is going to be explained in the after this. You may next it, Dicky. So a problem is something that makes you cannot achieve something, and you need to find solution of it. That is it called a problem solving. Second, we are going to talk about how do we solve a problem. Okay, guys, first I will just talk about something that in general, because something more deep, it will be explained with my with my group partner. They will explain more, but I'm just gonna talk a little bit about this. First, we have seen that a problem consists of set of information and a question to answer. Artinya itu ada sebuah informasi dan itu memerlukan jawaban untuk kita jawab. Untuk mendapatkan jawabannya, kita harus menggunakan atau mengolah informasi yang ada. Right? The way it might quite what happened? Am I audible?
Yes, Dila.
I just lost. Okay. Guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Dila.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry, guys. All right. Sampai mana tadi? Ya. Ketika kalian here, seperti yang sudah aku jelaskan tadi, caranya itu adalah, first we're going to talk about ini, data, process, and solution. Ini adalah prosedur yang dipublikasikan oleh banyak orang, tapi sebenarnya, but actually, this is when we do this kind of process, we have to provide the data, we do the process, we do the solution. It is something not necessary untuk beberapa kasus. Contohnya tadi yang aku jelaskan, ada beberapa hal yang tidak harus dilakukan sesuai prosedur. And then I'm going to talk about this. This is all well and good, and in that or present way problem can be solved. It says nothing about the word and a particular and error mean. It is in detail that the key to problem is found. In simple terms, we are concerned with identifying the necessary piece of data and finding suitable process. There are no hard, you may, next, Dicky. There are no hard and fast rules. Different problems must be approached in different way. This is why problem solving appears in thinking skill examination. It tests the ability of candidate to look at the situation in different way, to be able to use many different strategy to find that work. It called like this. Tidak ada solusi yang paling benar, karena setiap kondisi itu akan memerlukan solusi yang berbeda-beda. Jadi misalnya bayangkan, so imagine, wait a minute. Itu kenapa you have to be aware about seeing something not just in one perspective, because like I told you before, the solution is the one, there is no one best solution. It's just about how you can use that solution. Is it good enough to solve the problem or not? You may next it, Dicky. There are several ways problems may be approached. Pertama itu a term used a lot of heuristic. This word comes from the Greek to find and refer to what might call trial and error method. The alternative method depend on being systematic. For example, an exhaustive may lead the answer. Previous experience of solving similar type of question will always be helpful. Okay, here's I will give an example to you guys. For example, imagine, bayangkan kalian itu keluar rumah kalian itu keluar dan kalian tuh tidak bisa menemukan kunci rumah kalian. Nah, apa yang harus kita lakukan adalah mencari kuncinya, dan itu merupakan problem solving yang akan kita lakukan. And then ketika kita menggunakan the heuristic method, dan heuristic method ini sometimes adalah the quickest atau metode yang paling cepat. Artinya kita kembali ke rumah itu dan kita akan mendatangi semua tempat untuk berusaha mencari kuncinya. It is called the heuristic method, guys. Tapi setelah kita mencari itu semua, kita started think, okay, I think it's not gonna work. Kita merasa, oh kayaknya metode ini tidak berhasil, dan kita bisa menggunakan yang namanya tuh systematic method. Dimana ketika kita menggunakan systematic method ini ada dua cara yang bisa kita gunakan. Yang pertama itu menggunakan pengalaman kalian, yang artinya kalian itu berpikir secara hati-hati tentang, oh terakhir, jadi adalah kalian berpikir pengalaman kalian sebelum keluar terakhir kali di mana. That probably you can do. You use your experience. And then it could be the quickest method. Yang kedua adalah mathematical term is often known as the brute force method, yang dimana itu nge-involve searching every room of the house truthfully until they are found. This is often the most reliable method, tapi bisa juga itu akan memakan waktu yang sangat panjang. Jadi kalian tidak berusaha untuk menggunakan your past memory, which is the systematic, dan ketika kalian menggunakan yang kedua ini, kalian malah harus menyisir rumah kalian itu, dan itu akan memakan waktu yang cukup lama. And then it's actually how you solve the problem, guys. You can next it. Okay. Ketika orang, when people are solving problem, mereka cuma tidak akan menggunakan metode yang tadi, karena often kita itu pakai logical, tapi sesuatu yang perlu diingat adalah one of the prime skill yang kamu perlu ketika tackling problem solving question itu adalah untuk nge-examination, is to make a good judgment of which method is the most appropriate one to use in any set of circumstances. That is why I told you it is very important for you to think fast and to think wise which one is the best, and to see the condition which one is fit, because you cannot use all the method, just use that, it's not gonna be work. Here is the example of the case, and then here also the solution. And then from this case you may next Dicky. Back before. Okay, I will explain thing a bit. Okay, you may read in here. Okay, the summary is si Julie ini merasa dia itu bayarnya tuh berlebihan, dan ketika kalian memiliki skill problem solving, kalian akan dapat menyelesaikan masalah yang Julie punya. Dengan adanya data, dia coba untuk bandingkan, dan akhirnya itu ketemu jawabannya bahwa yes, dia memang bayar kelebihan. That is why here can be shown that the summary of the charge on the items bill is 453, and then this is 18 less than her bill. Jadi bisa dikonklusikan bahwa itu tuh overpriced. None of the other item could come to exactly 18, either singly or severally. And then here's the example. You have to list first all the things, and then you analyze it, and then you will find the solution. I'm sorry. You might next it, Dicky. Okay, through the example, it illustrated many of the methods used in solving problem. First is identify clearly and ambitiously the solution that is required. Itu penting sekali untuk kalian membaca pertanyaannya dan dengan hati-hati dan juga memahami konteksnya. Karena ketika kalian tidak paham konteksnya, kalian tidak akan bisa untuk lanjut ke step selanjutnya yang dimana kalian melihat data yang disediakan. So, kalian harus mengidentifikasi yang mana yang relevan dan yang mana tidak irrelevan seperti yang tadi. Kalau data relevan akan data yang tidak relevan akan memberikan jawaban kenapa dia bayar lebih karena itu tidak relevan. That is why we can see that Julie is getting overpriced by then. Three is do you need to make one or more intermediate calculation before you can reach the answer? And this is kind of divine strategy for solving the problem. The next one is you may need to search the given data for a page of information that solve or help to solve the problem. And then past experience of similar problems help. If you have never seen this type of problems before, you'll have had to spend more time to understanding it. Seperti yang sudah dijelaskan tadi, pengalaman akan sangat membantu. Contohnya kayak kalian bikin kopi, kalau kalian sudah pernah bikin itu, kalian akan bisa melakukannya tanpa berpikir. Tapi untuk orang yang tidak bisa bikin kopi, mereka harus mencari caranya untuk membuat kopi. It is also happen in many case ketika kalian pernah menghadapi suatu masalah, kalian akan lebih mudah untuk menyelesaikan masalahnya. Instead of you guys are facing a new problem, it will take a longer for you to find the solution because you never going through on that. And the last one is the above problem was solved using a systematic procedure, in this case calculating the correct bill of value not given in original problem. So we can see that caranya untuk menyelesaikan masalah di sebelumnya adalah menggunakan systematic procedure and it's needed. Next, Dicky. This is the step to critical thinking as it relate to problem solving. First, kalian harus identifikasi dulu masalahnya, apakah menentukan dulu apakah masalahnya itu ada atau tidak. Kalau tidak ada masalah, jangan dijadikan masalah. Okay, so you just have to find the solution for a problem that actually exists and important to solve. Second of all, analyze the problem. Look at it from different angles because you cannot see in only one perspective karena segala sesuatu yang dilihat dari satu sisi itu akan bias and you cannot find the best solution of that. That is very important for you to see in different. Contohnya kalau contohnya bikin aja andai-andai, oh kalau aku di posisi ini gimana, kalau di posisi ini gimana, kalau di posisi itu gimana, it does matter. Third is brainstorm and come up with several possible solution. Gunanya brainstorm adalah kalian berusaha untuk mencari permasalahan dan kalian coba gali lagi permasalahan itu dengan beberapa solusi yang mungkin akan muncul dari hasil brainstorming kalian. Maybe it will be a pretty mess at first, but ketika kalian coba organize it, it will be good. The last one is decide which solution fit the situation best, and second, it is very important to be wise to choose which method which method or solution that you're supposed to use. Next, Dicky. This is going to be selecting and using information in one very simple form. Problem solving involves understanding and making use of information. Information can come in a great variety of form, and if you want to be good at using it, you will need to practice extracting data from a range of source. Next, Dicky. And then you may find a lot of areas of selecting and using information. Here are some of form that you probably can found. Pertama itu adalah table. Ini adalah contoh table, and this is something that you can solve. Second one is next, Dicky. I will just be quick. The second one is graphical information. So you probably will find this as well, and this could be a problem that needs to be answered. The third one is next, Dicky. Word. Okay, this is something that you and us will most likely to find adalah bentuk yang seperti ini, verbal information, di mana dijelaskan dulu masalahnya dan kalian identify what is the best solution, and this is something that pretty basic and general. Next, Vicky. is pictorial information. This one is quite complicated. Kalian harus memahami pattern dan memahami pattern, and it's quite take long. Dan ada apa namanya itu, ada trik untuk menyelesaikan permasalahan ini, and it will be explained later, and you may read the book because the presentation will never be enough. Next, Dicky. This is one is diagram, and then here is also the example that probably you will find diagrammatic information, and this is also the form of selecting and using information. Next, Dicky. And I think that's all from me, and then the presentation will be continued to my friends. The screen is yours.
All right, thank you, Adhila. So let's move on to the presentation data. So in the previous chapter, we looked at selecting the correct items data. Wait, by the way, is my voice audible?
Yes.
Can you hear my
Yes.
voice clearly? All right. So yeah, in the previous
Yes.
chapter, So in the previous chapter, we looked at solving problems by selecting correct items of data from various sources and using them in the correct way to produce a solution. So also, Adhila said that when we're trying to solve a problem, there's a process in getting the answer. So in this chapter, considers problems where the required data clearly and unambiguously means interpretation. So what is we're going to use in solving the problem? And the next one is we can learn in processing data. We can learn that it can sometimes be useful to work backwards from the answer to identify what needs to be calculated. So in this more. Next slide, please. So important data is given clearly. So to summarize this slide, when we're trying to solve a problem, we focus on the given data. And once we collect all the given data, we can now find the correct solution in order to answer the problem. So from this example, so the skill in this question is to use the correct pieces of information appropriately and at the right time in the calculation. So there are 5 relevant pieces of data here. And the fact that they arrive at the same time. So in problem, we should take note that we should take note that when we solve a problem, we should take all the data. Wait. Oh, okay. So the point here is in solving a problem. So this example shows that there are 5 given data, which is very clear, which we can use in order to find the solution and solve the problem. Next slide, please. So, so it can sometimes be useful to work backwards from the answer to identify what needs to be calculated. So in this part, it explains that. Let's take a look at the example first. Because from the first example, the answers are given, but there's a multiple choice. We don't know yet the answer, but the answers are given. So we only have to choose. But on this part, on the second slide, on the next slide, the answer is not given. So there's no choices. So to answer this problem, we have to use the backward methods wherein since the problem requires an answer, we have to take all the data given and form a calculation in order to be directed on the right solution. So from the diagram below, which illustrates the following example, one method of which this example illustrates one method of approaching problem questions. So we know that answer is required, and then so which pieces of information do we need to come up with to get the answer, which are the information required, and then the data given. So this indicates which calculations need to be made in the given data. Next slide, please. So let's move on to the findings of methods of solution. After we dealt with problems for which the method of solution was relatively easy to find, because from the previous examples, the data are already given, so we can already take notes of all the data given. Well, in this chapter, we are looking at the problems where the primary skill in solving them is develop a method of solution. So the way of proceeding to an answer in some problems may not be clear. It is because either it is necessary to find an intermediate solution first. So in this part, intermediate solution first. Intermediate solution means here that in connection with the last presenter last week, that when we try to claim something, we assume first. So we in solving a problem, we commit to the intermediate solution first before proceeding to the final answer. And then the second one is because we need to work simultaneously forward from the data, meaning to identify what can be calculated, and backwards from the required answer, or means to identify what needs to be calculated. So having a strategy for approaching such problems is important. In particular, it can be very useful if you have seen a problem of a similar sort before. So this is where experience in tackling problem solving can be invaluable. So there are some strategies that can help you to solve a problems when you are not clear how to proceed. So to analyze the problem, here are the steps. Organize the information you are given. Second is write down or underline those pieces of information which you feel are important. So when we're solving a problem, we focuses on the information that will benefit us in order to get the answer. And then third is simplify, which means we have to reject the unimportant information, which is in accordance to the second strategy. And then third is look at the question and decide what pieces of information could lead to the answer. And the last one is make a sketch, list, or table. Next slide, please. So those strategies may be regarded as similar to the identifying of intermediate conclusion in chapter 2.6, which was discussed by the last week presenter about the arguments, the claims, and then so the solution of a problem can be like an argument that first leads to one conclusion. Like what I've said a while ago, when we're trying to solve a problem, we conclude an answer already, but we're still not sure if that's the correct answer. So which then possibly using further information will help to proceed to the final conclusion. So this may be illustrated as in the diagram below. Next slide, please. So the importance of finding methods of solution for problems where answer is not necessary. So from a while ago, when we're in solving a problem, there's a process that we need to follow. And sometimes in a problem, for example, in this example, so in this example, we cannot easily find the solution and how to get the answer. That is why it is important to find the methods on how to get the solution. Next slide, please. Next is looking for intermediate results may help to lead to the final answer. In connection to the last slide, from the previous slide, we look for the intermediate results because sometimes when we're concluding something in solving a problem, it helps us to find that there could be that we could proceed to the final answer. So in this example, there's another problem where an intermediate calculation is necessary because an intermediate calculation is necessary in here because the answers are not given. Unlike from the previous examples, they don't have the can just choose. So yeah, in this one, the answer is required, but it is not given. So we have to find the solution first in order to get the question. So in this problem, they find the immediate result first, which is the 8CH. That will lead to the final answer, where they can use as the variable in connecting all the solutions. Next one. Next slide, please. So looking at the value of alternative ways of presenting data and considering more than one way of solving problems. In this part, we can assume that in solving a problem, there's not for the alternative on solving the problem. So like on this example, at first they didn't use the diagram. The diagram, which this one, the Venn diagram, they didn't use first. So since all the students take physics, the situation is simplified. So they take note, like they list all the data given, and at first on this activity, on this example, they solve it in a direct fashion, wherein they making an intermediate calculation, and then the alternative way to solve this problem is to do the Venn diagram, which is considering all the graphs, pictures, and diagrams, which can be very helpful in solving the problems, which was discussed by Adhila a while ago, that a problem can be solved in many ways in terms of diagram, pictures, graphs, and everything. So the activity shows that problems can be solved in more than one way. It is important to keep the mind open to alternatives and not always to pursue a method which is not apparently leading to slide, please. So moving on to the solving problem searching. So there's a lot of ways on solving. Another problem is by searching. It is not it is not the literal meaning searching where we look at the Google. It is not. But problems all direct methods of calculation. So, and sometimes problems do not have a single solution, but many. So we need to find one that represents a maximum or a minimum. For example, the least cost or shortest time for a journey. So in these cases, we need to have a systematic method of data to come up with all possibilities. So this is called a search, wherein we evaluate all the data to come up all the possibilities in in solving the problem. So here's the example. These are the types of searching: exhaustive search, directed search, and selective search. All right, next slide, please. So in this example, the easiest way to approach this question is to list the possibilities in a systematic order. So do you think, what do you think is the search that we can use? Exhaustive search, where every possible combination is considered. And it will be answered in an alternative way, which is through directed research, where we are looking selectively for a solution and we will give up the search once we have found one. Next slide, please. The last one is the selective search. So a third alternative may be described as selective search. So in this case, we are using a partial analysis of the problem to reduce the size of the search. This means that we concentrate on a certain area or to reject an unlikely areas. So from the term itself, selective, in a thinking process by which one focuses on useful or related facts while ignoring unrelated facts or we focus us on the find, and we remove or we do not pick those unrelated facts that will not help us in solving the problem. So the next part will be discussed by Dicky.
Okay, so I will continue the presentation, and we got recognizing patterns here. So recognizing patterns, what is it? Well, it is a skill. These chapters deals with a specific skills that requires you to be able to identify pieces or sets of information in different forms, which are equivalent. So what does it mean then? It means that recognizing patterns is a way of thinking precisely with graphical, verbal, and tabular information like data, for example. And funnily enough, we unconsciously use this type of skill in daily basis. We usually use recognizing pattern skill in a math problem. But the real thing is, people often use recognizing pattern when dealing with quantitative data, like in research, for example. So you may wondering, why do we need this skill? It is because we need to be able to understand how to read data with the help of recognizing pattern. With this skill, we can read graphs and tables carefully, and we will not make errors in identifying similarities. So look at the example. I can assure you this is not math. This is just critical thinking. I focused on the way of we think, the way of thinking, which is recognizing pattern. I'll give you 5 seconds to answer this one, but keep it to yourself. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So the table shows the results of survey into ownership of various household appliances by families who live in the town. The question is, which of the bar charts accurately represents the data shown below? Now, you may recognize some pattern here, like in the B, C, and D. B, C, D have similar pattern. They have similar charts. So A and E is definitely wrong. So we can throw it out of the window. So B, C, D, we're left with B, C, D. Now, with recognizing pattern, we can compare, pair our thinking and then solve a problem. Now, let's analyze B. B have dishwasher, which is at 100%. Is it true though? No, because dishwasher is 68%. So B is definitely wrong. Now, let's look at C. Toaster, for example. Toaster is at 100%. In the charts, it is 92. Perhaps it is possibility. But let's look at the next one. Food processor. Food processor is almost at 100%. But is it true? Let's look at the table. It is 54%. So it is wrong, right? So C is definitely wrong. So we left with D, which is the correct one. Why I emphasize this? Because we can solve a problem with fast with recognizing pattern. So the next example is this one. You don't have to answer this because we can already see the patterns, right? So without further ado, let's go ahead next the material. Now, let's move on to the hypothesis, reasons, explanations, and inference. So before we start, what is hypothesis? Well, the hypothesis or basic assumption is a temporary answer to a problem that is still presumption because it still has to be proven true. So it is still temporary. Before we do research or solving a problem, we need to make a hypothesis. It is basically an assumption as a temporary answer to a problem. Let's say that if you get at least 6 hours of sleep, will you do better on test than if you get less sleep? Now, I'll make the hypothesis. My hypothesis is that I will do better on test if I get at least 6 hours of sleep. That's my hypothesis. But is it true though? No, because it's still not proven yet, right? So we have to run some tests, we have to run some search and all that stuff. So that's hypothesis. Now let's move on to the reason. So reason is the capacity of consciously applying logic to seek truth and draw conclusion from new or existing information. Reason or reasoning is a justification for our conclusion. Why do I believe the earth is round, not flat? It is because I have my own strong reason to believe it is round. It makes sense to be round because a researcher already ran numerous tests on Earth, multiple calculations about Earth, and it comes to a conclusion that Earth is round, and it's logically true. So that's the reason. Now we got explanation and inference. Explanation is a statement or account that makes something clear, whereas inference means to draw a conclusion, usually from some factual or supposedly factual information. So it is pretty self-explanatory. When a statement or some information is really clear, we can start to draw an inference or a conclusion for ourselves. Now, so we already know hypothesis, reason, explanation, and inference. This is one of the skills too, the way we solve the problem. Now, let's take a look at the problem. Here we got example. Let me read it to you. I was shopping at a market and asked a local how much an orange was. He said that an orange and a lemon together cost $2. Remember this, $2, an orange and a lemon. Then he further confuses me by saying that a grapefruit and a lemon cost $3, and that all three were different prices. The question is, based on this rather unhelpful information, which one of the following can be confirmed? So there are options here. Which one can we confirm based on this information? So we get A, B, C, and D. So I already told you about hypothesis, right? So hypothesis is an assumption, a temporary answer. So you can answer this, but keep it to yourself. I would make a hypothesis. My hypothesis is C. A grapefruit cost more than $1. So what's the reason behind my hypothesis then? So we got a couple of reasons. So reason one, an orange and a lemon cost $2. So we got $1 for each, right? So A and D is completely false. Let's look at A. An orange cost more than a lemon, so it's false already. So and then D, an orange cost less than $1. It is already false. So we're left with B and C. Now let's take a look at my reason number 2. So a grapefruit, we don't know that yet, plus a lemon, which is $1, equals $3. So what does it left us with? $2, right? So a grapefruit is $2 plus lemon $1 equals $3. Therefore, a grapefruit costs more than $1. So my hypothesis is correct. My reasoning is strong, and then the explanation is makes sense. And then therefore, my inference is true also. So yeah, that's it. And then we got spatial reasoning. So spatial reasoning. Spatial reasoning involves the use of skills that are common in the normal lives of people working in skilled craft areas like surgeon or architects and many other jobs. So how spatial reasoning works then? In the simplest sense, when it comes to a problem-solving question involving spatial reasoning, we need, or it requires us to visualizing how an object will look upside down or in reflection. We use our brains and simulate a 2D object into 3D object. So the skill itself is pretty unique. It requires us to be able to visualize the inside of the body in 3 dimensions. So we can imagine things from 2 dimensions into 3 dimensions. Now, before I confuse you, let's take a look at the example. So this is the example, right? We got the 2D things, this one, right? Below the number 80, we got 2D. And then we got the answer A, B, C, D in 3D. So we use spatial reasoning and then imagine it from 2D into 3D. So what's the answer then? If you do this correctly, the answer is C. So that's how we use spatial reasoning. I think that's it from me. Go ahead. The next one.
All right, thank you so much, Dicky. And we'll move on to my presentation today. And the first one is necessity and sufficiency. The words necessity and sufficiency are used in mathematics but we have exactly the same meaning as they do in normal language. The way we understand a necessity and sufficiency is an individual piece of data is necessary to solve a problem. We cannot solve the problem without it. A set of data is sufficient to solve a problem and it contains all the information we need. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to give you some example here, an example. The example is to illustrate this type of a question described here. We start with a very simple example. Bayangkan ada sebuah mobil, kalian naik sebuah mobil, lalu kalian tahu jam kalian berangkat kapan, dan kalian juga tahu kecepatan rata-rata dari mobil kalian. Nah, kita ingin tahu kapan kita tiba di sana atau jam berapa kita tiba di tempat tujuan kita. Nah, di sini kira-kira apa sih the piece of information that we need to finish the calculation to give us the result that we need. So, next slide, please. The solution is pretty straightforward. We need the distance of the journey. We can then calculate the journey time, distance divided by the speed, and thus the arrival time. All the three pieces of data we know are necessary to do this calculation. The three pieces taken together are sufficient. Jadi, jika kita ingin mencapai sebuah sufficient, kita harus tahu kira-kira apa sih the piece of information that we need to finish a certain calculation. Jika tidak ada bagian dari sebuah informasi tersebut, maka kita tidak bisa dikatakan tidak mungkin untuk menyelesaikan sebuah problem atau sebuah permasalahan. Next slide, please. Choosing and using models. The most obvious and familiar use of the word model is that of a replica of an object. For an example, an airplane at a smaller scale. Another example is an architect. For an example, architects use a wide range of a model. They may build a scale model of a building to let the client see it and give it a better impression of how it will look. Their drawings are also models of the structure of the building. In the modern practice, these drawings are made on a computer, which will contain the three-dimensional models of the building in a digital form. This may be used to estimate the material cost and carry out the structural calculation, as well as the producing three-dimensional walkthrough picture on the screen. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right. Making choices and decisions. Many of the problems we encounter in everyday life involve making choices and decisions. To buy or not to buy, which one to buy, or how much to buy. The ultimate goals of decision making is to arrive at the actionable conclusion, and critical thinking is the process that proves whether the conclusion sounds. The decision making is one of the most important skills you can have. You can make decisions every day for the various functions, from personal to professional uses. The question may involve skills that have been covered in earlier chapter, extracting information, processing data, finding methods of solution. The only real difference is that the question asks for a decision to be made. Next slide, please. There are three main ways to approach decision making. The first one is intuition. The intuition is your default response or the gut feeling of you when you get presented with a problem or decision to make. This first reaction comes from a combination of things you have been learned, experience you have, and option you hold. So everyone's intuition is different. Using intuition means basing your decision on your life experience, so it can be subjective. The next one is reasoning. Reasoning, on the other hand, is rooted in data. You reason when you see the data available to you, and you only base a decision of fact and figure instead of your instinctive reaction. This is more objective way to come to a decision, and it's usually how bigger decisions are made. The last one is both. Typically, decisions are made with both intuition and reasoning. Using both is a good way to check and make sure your choice is logical. Since we make decisions all the time, we usually don't stop think about whether we should make an intuition-based or reason-based decision. Instead, we naturally use a combination of them two. Next slide. All right, I think I'm pretty sure that that's it all from our group presentation today. And thank you so much for listening into the very end of our presentation. And like usual, I would let you make a question or give us a question regarding our presentation today. So feel free to ask.
Go ahead if you guys have any questions or comments. You can ask us.
Is there there is no question from you guys? Um, we don't mind to answer any kind of situation, any kind of something that probably you guys are confused or something. Right, Dicky? Right, Kit? Right, Indra?
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Yes.
May see the paper of this slide before that one that intuition. There's intuition like that.
Again?
Uh, and go for it. Where's the intuition one? Yang ada intuisi tadi intuition before the last. Yes, there's. May you explain again the first one that intuition is? I want to make I still want to make things clearer.
Okay, I will answer your question. I will try to answer your question. So, intuisi itu seperti misalnya kita kayak perasaan gitu loh, perasaan misalnya kayak membatin gitu. Kalau orang kita bilang itu kayak membatin. Kayak gimana sih misalkan untuk membuat suatu pilihan itu kita harus kayak feel or try to apa itu ya percaya kepada diri kita sendiri gitu loh. Percaya kepada our gut gitu loh. Gimana sih kayak misalnya kan kita sudah pernah misalnya seseorang sudah punya experience tentang suatu hal gitu kan, tentang suatu hal misalnya dia pernah melakukan ini, telah melakukan hal seperti ini, lalu kemudian dia dihadapkan dalam situasi yang sama, lalu apa yang harus kita percaya di sini adalah intuisi kita sebagaimana bahwa kita itu pernah mengalami hal tersebut, lalu kita mencoba untuk apa ya, mencoba untuk melakukan hal yang sama tapi kita sudah tahu apa dari konsekuensinya dari apa yang hal yang kita lakukan tersebut. Jadi the first reaction comes from a combination. Jadi intuisi adalah the first reaction come from a combination of things you have learned, experience, and you have had, and opinions you hold. So everyone's intuition is different. Jadi intuisi setiap orang itu berbeda ketika dia dihadapkan oleh suatu permasalahan. Kira-kira itu saja yang bisa saya sampaikan. Kira-kira mungkin ada yang ingin ditambahkan?
I would like to add a little bit. So intuition comes naturally in our unconscious self, right? When you faced between two tough choices, that's when the intuition comes. So you want to follow your gut or follow your intuition, which one is better for you, and will lead the better result. So that's it.
Yeah, in
That's
other words,
true. It because
yes.
yes, you make it. We
So
complete each other.
other word for intuition is instinct. So this is the ability wherein you able to understand something immediately without thinking of other things because it is what you feel. So it is like the you don't need the conscious reasoning, but you follow what the gut feeling you have inside. So it's the instinct.
Yes, exactly. And you don't have to use your logic. So you doesn't really use your mind and your logic, and you just feel okay. You think that that is the right decision, that is the right solution, and you just take it. And that is intuition called.
Maybe one more question. Based on no, I mean, what is it? In your opinion, which one of these three decision making that one is probably the best one that maybe can what is it? Menentukan pilihan yang terbaik begitu. Which one of these three is the best one? That's all, I guess. Thank you.
I think, let me answer. I think it will be both actually, because have you ever heard that uh, when you have a reasoning but you are not sure about that, your guts didn't follow that reason, it's sometimes gonna come out wrong, and then like the solution will not gonna be good. I mean, like, I have done that before in my personal experience, and then like try to be objective. You just cannot use, like I told you, it cannot be one perspective like that. Like for example, reasoning. It cannot always be reasoning. Sometimes you also need to follow your intuition, because fun fact, people can feel. Sometimes people know it is good or not by the atmosphere, and it can continuous. I mean, like, you just don't realize it is, you just realize it is not good, and then like, even though the reasoning is already said it's good, but your intuition didn't say it's good, you better think again. That is why both, it's really needed when you are try to find the solution. I think that's from me. What about my other friends?
Yeah, I think I agree. Both is pretty good. So, it combines two so that you don't have to, think hard to choosing something. So yeah, is it clear, Fajar?
It's good
Okay,
answer. Thank you, group 2.
yeah.
All right, thank you for your questions as well.
By the way, Pajar dari grup mana? Where the group?
Group 2.
Okay. Thank you, Pajar.
Ada lagi kang guys? You still have any question?
I think if there's no one asked, we may close our presentation. We will give like until 36, maybe 2 minutes to wait. And then if there is no, we may end our presentation.
If you don't have any questions, maybe comments. Do you have any comments?
Are you guys sure? Understand all the material? Wow.
Well, that would be the end of our presentation and the question and answer session. We will now close the presentation. Thank you everyone for listening and thank you for the question and answer. I hope we answered your questions and satisfied and get satisfied by the answer that we gave you. Thank you everyone.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Please read the book because our chapter is pretty long. You need to read that slowly to understand whole thing. Semangat!
If you
Yeah,
guys have
guys.
any question, just ask us, and later on maybe.
Mhm.
Text us. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.